Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. If any of you have fellow InfoBurst users or coworkers who maybe wanted to attend today's webinar but couldn't, the recording will be made available up on the InfoSol event site, and I'll provide you the link to that at the end of this presentation. And also, you'll receive a follow-up email from today's webinar with a link to that recording. One moment. Okay, with that, we'll get started with today's webinar, and I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to join us live to see what the new InfoBurst version has to offer. We always appreciate your presence and your time and your ideas for InfoBurst. All right, so let's take a look at InfoBurst 2022.3. Before we do that, I think most of you know me. For those that don't, my name is Bryan Baca. I'm the manager of product support at InfoSol, and my field is primarily InfoBurst. As always, please feel free to reach out and contact me if you have questions, concerns, anything you want. Drop me an email, drop us a line on the help desk. We're happy to hear from you. Okay, so today we're talking about InfoBurst 2022.3. And if you follow the InfoBurst announcements forum, you would have been notified about 30 minutes ago of the release of InfoBurst 2022.3. So that is available for download as of this morning. As always, the release notes are available in the help desk forum. So if you just browse to help.infosol.com, select forums, and you'll see the release notes forum, and you'll see this new release right at the top of that list, and it'll have all the details about that release there, right? We're going to go into a lot of the detail today, but a lot of the documentation that supports the features enhancements that we're talking about can all be found linked through the release notes. Okay. All right, let's jump right in and talk about new features and enhancements. And first, we're going to talk about actions. So I thought it would be good to just refresh everyone's memory about what actions are, why we use them in InfoBurst. So actions are things that can be leveraged based on the status of a burst or a schedule. So when a burst starts, when it completes, when it fails or aborts, InfoBurst can run one or more actions that do things like send an email alert or create a text file for use by another application, or maybe execute a query. There's, I think, over a dozen different actions that can be performed based on the status of the burst or the schedule. And we've had more and more feedback from users about the nature of their actions and their relation to, let's say, the burst, right? So I'll give you an example. Maybe we have a burst that when it starts needs to go execute a query, right? We have many users that do this, that will maintain tables outside of InfoBurst where they're tracking activity in InfoBurst through on start, on complete, and on abort queries, right? So we'll go update a table with a status, maybe with a burst ID, something like that. And so, and those tables are used operationally for other purposes. And these actions are critical to the burst, meaning they're kind of part of the overall process, right? And so based on user feedback, we've introduced this concept of a is critical option on an action. What that means is that the action, its status will influence the status of the burst, right? So in that example I gave you earlier, right? So if the burst runs a query on start and the query fails for some reason, maybe there's an error from the database or InfoBurst couldn't connect to the database, that's considered part of the burst process, therefore abort the whole thing. So we've introduced new behavior. This is critical flag that you can see there in the screenshot is an opt-in. And when you opt in, this is the behavior. So, and this is at the burst level. If an action is applied to the on-start status of the burst and that action fails, the burst will not execute, it won't run, and its status will be marked as aborted. And if that burst also has one or more actions applied to the on abort status, those actions will be executed as well, because you're opting in to say, if that on start fails, abort the whole thing and also run the on abort action. So that's what that flag will do when the action on start fails. If the action on complete status fails, one moment, even if the burst completes successfully, if the on complete action fails, then the burst status will be updated to aborted, and then any on abort actions was run there as well. So that's the concept behind the new is critical flag on the actions. So let me show you what that looks like. We'll switch over to InfoBurst here. So I have an action here that's designed to fail. It's writing to this is a create file action that's writing to a path that does not exist. So it will fail. So what I'll do is I'll switch over here to a burst, and let's say our on start action is this action that will fail. Then I will also apply an on abort action. This is a standard email notification action. So in the event of a failure, send an email to some people. Okay, so that's our scenario. Now, if I run this, right, based on those rules, the action will fail, the burst will not execute, and then we'll go on to execute the on abort action. So let's run that so you can see what that looks like in the log. And this will run very quickly. Okay, so here we can see the this is the on start action being invoked. It failed. We can see here burst execution canceled. We did not run the burst, and we executed the on abort action, which was an email notification. So that's what that flag will do in this scenario. And then the other scenario is this. So let's remove this one, and we'll remove that one. Let me save that. So what we'll do now is we're going to apply this action that will fail to the on complete status. Apply that and save it. So in this scenario, the burst is going to run successfully. The on complete action will be executed. It will fail. And upon failure, InfoBurst will update the status of the burst to aborted, even though it completed successfully. And there you go. And you can see there it finished, it ended successfully, but because that on complete action failed, we've updated the status to aborted. The overall concept here is providing a mechanism to inform users and administrators when a burst that uses actions, those actions fail. That was the intent behind this. So that's new functionality. All right. Let's move on to macros. And before I talk about this enhancement, just a refresher on delivery conditions. So in InfoBurst, we have this concept of the delivery condition that says when there is a delivery for an item in a burst, maybe it's a Webby report, maybe it's a Tableau workbook or something like that, there's an option at the delivery level to apply a delivery condition that says, basically, don't run that delivery if the condition is not true, right? So here's an example in the screenshot. We've engineered a condition that's looking at a sales worksheet in the report Excel, and we're looking at a specific cell. We're saying the condition is equals to, and then this is the new functionality. In the past, you would have to hard code some sort of value, right? A number, a date, a string, whatever it is you were evaluating. And many users have requested the ability to leverage the InfoBurst macro system at the delivery condition level. So that's what's been added in 2022.3. So there's an example, right? Instead of having to hard code a date, you can now utilize the power of the macro system to use a date macro or a parameter macro, or all the different macros that are available. You can now use those as placeholders in your condition. So we're hopeful that this will provide more flexibility to the delivery condition feature. As I was developing this slide, I reminded myself that in the last version, InfoBurst 2022.2, we introduced a new run query macro, right? So this is a macro that will execute a query and return a value independent of bursting context, or anything like that. So you could actually engineer a condition here that runs a query to return a specific value from a database, and then that value is used for the condition evaluation. So this, for those that use delivery conditions, this should add another layer of flexibility for you. All right, one more enhancement to the macro system, and this one involves the @embed macro, and this one requires just a little bit of education for folks. I don't know that there's too many people that use this macro, but it's quite useful, and this enhancement hopefully makes it just a little more useful. So in InfoBurst, we have several different ways we can include in an email delivery or an email notification a custom message, right, in the message field. So if you go into a delivery, for example, you have the message field and you can type in some text, or you can use macros. You can even use simple HTML tags to format the message, or maybe add hyperlinks. But as InfoBurst users do, we've got users that have very complex requirements in this area, where they want to include in the message maybe a lot of information, or a heavily formatted message with images and hyperlinks and different text formats. And the challenge is that the message field in our user interface has got a max character limit. I think it's 2,000 and change, something like that. So in years past, we introduced this embed macro that says, okay, if you want to bring a huge complex message that is exceeds the number of characters that you can use in the message field, you can add your own HTML file or text file to InfoBurst and then reference that where that limit does not exist. You can have a really big complex HTML message field in that file, and then at runtime, InfoBurst will just pull that and put it in the message. So that's the concept behind the @embed macro. But it had its challenges, and I'll show you in a moment how the @embed macro works. Basically, what you do is you put the file, the HTML file or the text file that contains your message, whatever it is. You add that to InfoBurst, and then what you do is you leverage the macro to reference its path. Actually, let me switch out of this and show you what it would look like normally. So let's go over here. Actually, let's do this. So this is just an example of an HTML file. So I've put in a little message. I've got some text formatting. I've got a hyperlink in there. I've got reference to an external image I want to include in the email. So I put all that in here. Now I could put this in the message field of the delivery. It's not too complicated. But if I'm not working with a large message, the benefit of this for me is that I can work in a text editor where I've got more real estate to look at and develop the message versus that small screen in the user interface. So this has a couple of benefits. So this is the file that I've added to InfoBurst here, sample message. And let's go over here. So what I've got here is just a simple burst with a file that I'm delivering to email. And this is the message field I was talking about. And this is where we'd like to pull in the contents of that HTML file as the email message. And this is the syntax of the @embed macro that you have today in earlier versions. So you basically say the path to the file and then the name of the file. So this is in the demo folder, in the webinar folder, and then this is the name of the message. The challenge that we saw in users that were leveraging this is in the real world, our users will have long and complex folder paths. Maybe this message and the burst that's using it is 6, 7, 8 folders deep, and the the folder names are big, long things. It was really difficult for users to form that path correctly, and that again, that poses challenges. So a small change here. What you can now do when the burst and the HTML file, the text file that references are in the same folder, instead of having to include the entire path, you can just include a little, I always forget what this is called, caret maybe, I'm not sure. So that symbol, burst, so that's all we need, / the file name, and that's what we need. So we don't need to remember that entire path. All we need is that caret burst. So let me save that. I'll actually run that so you can see what it looks like when it pulls the message in. And I've seen the users that leverage the add-embed macro, theirs are not simple messages, very complex, highly stylized email messages that accompany their report content. Okay, so that's the text. You can see I added a little color, a font size. There's a hyperlink. There's a reference to an external message. So for those that use the add-embed macro, we hope this enhancement will make that process a little bit easier. But I went through the entire process hoping that those of you that weren't aware of the embed macro might see some potential to use it in your environment. And all this will be detailed in the release notes and in the help desk documentation. All right. Okay. I'll just pause there for a moment. Just remind everyone, if you've got questions, if they're fresh in your mind, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm going to review those. Actually, put them in the questions section of Zoom, the Q&A, and we'll go through all of those at the end. All right, let's move on then to the portal. So we have more and more InfoBurst users adopting the InfoBurst portal to host their BI content, right? So for those of you that aren't aware, all license levels of InfoBurst come with the InfoBurst portal. You can set up the portal and deliver your BI content to it, your Webby reports, your Tableau workbooks, your Power BI reports, and you can leverage InfoBurst security to allow users to come into the portal and consume their content. And because we've seen more and more adoption, we've got more and more users looking for enhancements to the portal. So we've added several in 2022.3. The first is the ability to filter content within what's called a content group, and I'll give you a little refresher when we go into the portal. So the idea in a content group is that I'm delivering content over time. So we maintain versions of that content automatically. And if you're bursting, the screenshot you see there, I bursted a report by state. So I have several different versions for different states. You can now filter the list of versions based on that value. So just a little filter option at that content level. This is something that would be done by an administrator in the main user interface. Admins can now rename portal subfolders. This was not possible in the past, but now you can make that change. Just a reminder here, and this is documented bold print in the documentation, that when you reference a path in a delivery, in this case to a portal folder, it's /folder name. That's static in the delivery. So if you do rename a folder, make sure you're updating the deliveries that reference that path, because the path will not be automatically updated with that folder change. And for this reason, I'll give my pitch about delivery templates. Delivery templates become super valuable over time. A delivery template allows you to define a standard destination and format, and then when building a burst, instead of creating the delivery manually, you can just leverage the template. And in this scenario, if you got a delivery to a specific portal folder, instead of users referencing that path, over and over and over again manually in their deliveries, create a template, use the template, and when that path should change, if you have to rename the folder, you just need to update the template once, and all the bursts that use that template will be updated. Versus you coding the paths manually, then you're going to have to go and find all those deliveries and update them by hand. So use templates where possible. And then finally, we've added the ability to upload content directly to the portal. So in the past, the only way to get content into the portal was for InfoBurst, a burst, to deliver it to the portal. Now, an admin user can upload content into the portal, and you can see all the different formats there that are supported. So let me show you this in the portal itself. So let's switch over. Okay, what are we looking at here? So let's go into the demo folder. I'll just pick, and again, these are called content groups. The reason we call them content groups is because it's not just files in folders. What you're looking at is a group of versioned content, hence content group. So here I have a content group. It's a PDF content from a report called Sales by Region. And as you can see, I've got different versions based on different bursting values for regions. So Asia, Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa. So the new option here, the little magnifying glass icon, will give you a list of the bursting values available in this content. Let's say I only want to see Sub-Saharan Africa, apply, and that filters that down, and I just see that version. So for those of you that are maintaining many versions of bursted content, hopefully this makes it a bit easier to find the content that you're looking for. Let's see, we also had the upload option. Again, I'm logged in to InfoBurst as an admin, so I have this ability. This would not be available to a portal user because they are just consumers. But you'll have under the actions option here, upload file, really simple. You go out and find your file. Let's just say we want we'll do a few things. Let's grab a PDF. Sorry, where is this? Documents. We'll just grab this one right here. We'll upload that. Okay, there's the file I just uploaded. Pretty simple. And one of the supported formats is text. So let me see if I've got a file here that'll work for us. I think I do. There we go. So one of the other enhancements around this file upload is a text viewer. So currently, the file types that you can view in the portal, where you don't have to download them and open them like Excel, are HTML and PNG, right? So now let's upload a text file. And we'll go out to our desktop here, and I'll just grab just a copy of my server log from yesterday. We'll upload that. And now, previously the text file was just a file to be downloaded and viewed in a text viewer. Now you can view the text file in the portal. It's got its own viewer. It was not on my slide, but there's also another subtle change in 2022.3. This is how the portal looks for you today. If you look at the portal, you've got these content group tiles, right? But we acknowledge that some of you are going to have lots of content groups in here, and it's not necessarily easy to look at a folder that contains 100 content groups looking at this tile view. So up here on the top right, you see a little orange icon. We're currently in the tile view. You now have a list view. So you can come in and view the content groups in table format, and you can come up here and sort the various columns to find the content you're looking for. And then the last feature I mentioned, this is just a little admin feature. Here I'm in system and configuration, and the portal, excuse me, the ability to rename a folder. So if I come in here to the demo reports folder, I have a subfolder here called folder 1. And if I click into that folder, I have this rename option, pretty simple. Oops. to an OK, and that's it. Now we can rename portal subfolders. Okay. All right, SharePoint. Each version over the last year or so, we've been adding more and more support for different SharePoint options. In a recent version, we added support for using SharePoint lists as data sources, publishing the contents of SharePoint lists. Now we have the ability to create a new SharePoint list from an InfoBurst data source. So you could execute a query or take data from an Excel and from it create a brand new SharePoint list up on your SharePoint server. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've set up a burst ahead of time. I have a query. Actually, let's just go in here and take a look at it. It's this one right here. This just returns a bit of sample data. And our goal here is to use a burst to generate the query data, and then from it create a SharePoint list, which we could then schedule. So let's go back over to the burst. And I've got my delivery here. And we have a new format when your destination is SharePoint, and that is SharePoint list. So if I run this, we can see that in action. Okay, while I'm doing that, I saw a Q&A come in from Tom. Can I go from Webby to SharePoint list? Not currently. Currently, it's just InfoBurst data sources, which are database query and Excel. I would encourage you, Tom, to put that request into our user influence forum. We'll talk about the influence forum just a little bit later, but that's certainly a good idea. Okay, so that was successful. And if we come over here to my SharePoint library, if we refresh this, there's our new SharePoint list, sales records. That was the name of the query, sales records 100. And there's the result. More and more users that are leveraging SharePoint list both to drive the bursting process as a data source, delivering the contents of SharePoint list to users, and now creating new SharePoint lists from InfoBurst data sources. Okay. All right, this is a feature that's been a long time in the making. It's something we're excited about because it's something that we have kind of struggled to offer over the years in a really comprehensive way. And I'll talk a little bit about the history of reporting in InfoBurst. But in 2022.3, we're introducing Discover. Discover is an internal reporting tool that you can use to generate detailed reports about all things InfoBurst. InfoBurst system, runtime, objects, all available within the existing InfoBurst user interface. You don't have to go external to InfoBurst to get data anymore. And we're looking at this very much like our macro system. If you use InfoBurst macros, you know there are hundreds and hundreds of them. And these are all macros that users have requested over the years to achieve their goals in InfoBurst, custom file names, date parameters, all the things you do with your macros. All of those mostly were inspired by users. And we're hoping that Discover will be the same thing. So what we've done is we've taken all the reports that were previously available via other means. And I could, if we quickly talk about the history of reporting in InfoBurst, I think we started out with a business object universe that you could download and run queries against. But this was very much just for runtime information. There was no object reporting whatsoever. And then came OData. OData was problematic. It's a nice idea, but a lot of our users struggled because the interface to our OData endpoint is Excel. And over the years, Microsoft have broken it and fixed it and broken it and fixed it. And it works for some users based on their Excel version and not for others. And so for that reason, it became really difficult to support OData. So we've now taken all of those OData reports, brought them into InfoBurst, plus a bunch of other reports that have been inspired by users just over the last development cycle. There were other reports that you could download, like a system schedule report and these types of things. We've now consolidated all of that into Discover, and this is what we're going to be developing going forward. Those legacy reporting options are still there, but we're no longer maintaining them, right? So we're not going to be adding things to them. We're not going to be fixing issues. We really want everyone to come in and adopt Discover. So let me show it to you first, and then we can talk about how you can influence Discover. Okay, so in 2022.3, everyone, not just administrators, will see the system menu. Now, if you're an administrator, you'll see all this admin stuff, configurations, users and groups, all of it. If you're a non-admin, you will now see system for the first time, but only for purposes of revealing Discover. And Discover is based on user access rights. So as a lower level user, I can come into Discover and run reports, but I can only run reports against things that I have access to. So we're not giving lower level users admin access. We're just giving the ability to run reports on their stuff, their bursts, their schedules, that type of thing. So under System and Discover is the new reporting interface. So let's just look at some of the options that are available here. So there are 3 different types of reports currently. System reports, which we're going to look at now, and then reports based on InfoBurst objects like bursts and schedules. And we'll come back to that in a moment, and I'll talk about the difference between object and object with references. But let's just start simple here, and we're going to run the users report. So this is a report that's going to return all the information about all users in the system. So we select the report type on the left, hit the run button on the right, and the report is returned. And there you can see all the columns that are available, all the metadata that exists for users is all dumped out into this report. So that's a simple report. Now let's look at a report with a parameter. Many of these reports have parameters. So let's select burst deliveries, for example. So this is a report that's going to show us all content delivered from all bursts within a range. So the parameters here are the start and end date. So let's just select, let's go back to the beginning of August. One moment. To the current date, and we'll run the report. And there you can see the result. So lots of information here in just this deliveries report. Let's see, what else do we have that has parameters? So let's just say I want to see documents associated with a platform. Okay, so we can see there that we need to know the platform name or ID, right? So I could come down here and say, let's run the platform report to get a list of platforms. Okay, there's all of our platforms. And I want to see all the documents associated with my dev BI42. So it's ID 20. So if I come back up here to, what were we looking at? Documents from a platform, ID 20. And there we can see all the documents associated with that platform, including types and that sort of thing. Let's see what else we have. Let's look at the object reports. So there are 2 different types of reports. Let me just run a standard report here. Let's run the burst report. This just gives us a list of all of our bursts, right? But what you don't have here are references. So for example, if I have a schedule that references one of these bursts, that information is not contained in this report, but that is valuable information, right? To know, especially if I'm going to delete something or change something, I want to know everything that references this particular burst. So that's where you would run objects with references. So that the list of reports you see in this under objects is exactly the same. The difference is the object report with references are going to take longer to run based on the complexity of your environment, right? How many objects do you have? How many references exist? And also the speed of the backend database, the InfoBurst repository. So if you just want to run a quick report, you'd run it as objects. If you want to see that object report with references, you'd select this and run that. So if we, what would be a good one here? Let's run this one, document. So if I run the documents report, we can now see all the documents. Then the first column is references, right? So we can expand that, and here I can see this particular document is referenced by this burst, right? So objects with references. Just keep in mind, these might take a little bit longer to run. So as you can see here, these are not static reports, they are interactive. So let's look at some of the other options that we have available. So we can see the references here. The text here is blue, that denotes a hyperlink. So anything that's blue is clickable. So from within this report, let's say I want to look at this Webby document here, city sales by metrics, I can actually open the document from the report, right? Let me close this. This document is referenced by a burst. Okay, so I've run my reports, my documents report. I'm interested in doing something with this document. I can see that this burst references it. And maybe I say, you know what? I want to delete that document from InfoBurst, but I know that I have to delete it from the burst first. The next action I'm going to take is to open the burst and delete the document. Well, I can open that burst because it's referenced straight from the report. So if I click the link, I'm right into the burst. The report's still in the background. I can go in and make my change to the burst, close out, and I'm still in that report. So the reports are completely interactive. All the objects can be opened and manipulated from the report itself. Let's go run another report here. Let's go back into system. Let's do something fun. Let's say bursts aborted. So I want to see everything that's aborted between today and the 1st of the month. Okay. Actually, you know what? I want to do this. Let's run this one, burst deliveries. Okay, some of the other interactive features of the reports themselves. These reports are customizable to start. So you have this little select columns button, and when we open that, we've got two options. First, we can pick and choose which columns to display in the report. So let's just say I don't want to see size, I'm not interested in document ID or path, right? So I can remove whatever I like. We can also reorder the columns. So if I'm going to generate a report, as I'll show you in a moment, and I want, let's say, the name column to be first, I can just drag that up, and maybe I want the document type to be the second column, right? So I can customize the order of the columns and the columns to display. When I click OK, we've now got the customized report. Notice that the columns themselves can be sorted, right? So let's say we want to sort that alphabetically. And once we have the report in the format that we want, this little black Excel icon here means you can now download that report in Excel format. So if we open that up, there's the complete report that we can now go in and manipulate and consume in Excel. Okay. All right, make sure I've covered everything on filter, hyperlinks, references. Okay, so we're not going to go through all the reports here. You can just get a flavor by looking at the list of what's available. But for all the work we've done to consolidate the reporting from other parts of the product into Discover and feedback that we got just through the 2022.3 dev cycle, we know that there are going to be more reports that you need or will find useful. So the question I'll pose to you now is, what reports are you looking for? If you've got ideas for reports, put them in the Q&A. I can tell you if those exist, or I can add them to a list. And if you don't have any ideas currently, but as you start thinking about Discover, and you come up with an idea for a report that's not in this version, let us know. We're really happy to consider those and get them added for the next version. We really want this feature to be useful to our InfoBurst admins and administrators, hopefully giving you a whole new level of visibility into the product. And I don't see any, let's see, I'm just looking at questions and comments related to this subject. So Barbara asked, does that sorting and column movement also apply to any multi-column lists you might create? No. No, that's a completely different interface, Barbara. But so it sounds like you have an idea of reordering columns in a multi-column list. Let me make a note of that and look into that for you. Just one moment. Oops. Barbara, I'll look into that and reach out to you and let you know for sure. I'm curious myself, actually. Let's see, what else regarding Discover? Lindsay asked, to clarify, is it the intention that the Discover feature will replace OData reporting? So all the reports that are available in OData are now available in Discover. OData is still there. It's not going away, but we're no longer maintaining that, meaning we're not enhancing it. We're not going to add new OData reports. Any new reports that we add to the system will all come through Discover. So you can, if you like using OData, you can still get to it, but I'd encourage you to use Discover because we're going to be adding, we've already added more reports in Discover than are currently available in OData. We never get rid of features. We know people like the features they use. Let's see. Okay, we'll come back to that one. Matt says, Discover report a visual representation of schedule distribution across time. 24-hour access looking at the number of reports set to that schedule. It would help spread volume across times. Okay, let me chew on that one a little bit, Matt. I'm going to add that to my notes. And what I might do is reach out to you for a little clarification and conversation. Okay, I've got your information there. Okay, all right. Looks like that's everything on Discover. So really encourage you to get updated and start using this feature. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like added. 240 users, as each version ticks by, we are encouraging more and more strongly our build 240 users to get current, get migrated off of 32-bit InfoBurst. Build 240 is the last 32-bit version. We're not patching it anymore. I know a lot of users are still on 240. So to stay current with bug fixes and all the new features that have come since build 240, including the new Discover feature, that's hopefully enough reason to get off of 240. So there you can see the document for the admins. Go into the help desk and search 64-bit migration. Pretty simple process. Walks you through it step by step to get on 64-bit and start using these features. As I said, the webinar recording will be available maybe later today, latest tomorrow at events.infosol.com. You should also get an automatic email when that video has been published up to the website. So we always like to preview the next version in these webinars. Our development process is very fluid. As many of you know, we don't issue a standard development roadmap because we are very responsive. We often get requirements from users that are time sensitive, and we're looking to get them in the next release. So where we start with a dev cycle, 2022.4 is not where we end. Conditions are constantly changing, and we like to be very reactive. But this is what we know about 2022.4 so far, which would probably come out in the November, December timeframe. We've just introduced Discover, right? System reporting. And I showed you the ability to customize a report and download that report in Excel format. In 2022.4, we're going to take it a step further and give you the ability to save that customized report, right? So these are the columns I want. This is the column or the column order I want. You, as an individual user, you'll be able to save that report and revisit it, right? It's your report. More importantly, you'll have the ability to schedule your Discover reports. So imagine a scenario where you've created a report that shows, let's say, bursts aborted for the week. And every Monday morning, you want to receive an automatic email from InfoBurst that has that particular report attached as an Excel file. So you'll be able to schedule your customized Discover reports using the power of the InfoBurst scheduler to push the Discover reports out to admins and users. So those two features are coming in 2022.4. We have been actively exploring support for cloud drives. We've had more and more requests for support for various cloud drives, and that's kind of part of the problem, is that there are so many of them, Box and Dropbox and OneDrive and AWS, and the list goes on and on. So we're kind of starting with the ones that we've had the most requests for, and then working through that list. So what we can say is that in 2022.4, we will introduce support for Box. Cloud drive support will not just be about delivering content to a drive. It'll be about reading content from a drive as well. So if you use SharePoint, you probably know that you can deliver files to SharePoint, but you can also read files from SharePoint like an Excel file. So if you're using an Excel file as a data source in InfoBurst, that Excel file can live in SharePoint and InfoBurst can read from it. The cloud drives will work exactly the same. So you'll be able to send content to the cloud drive and read content from the cloud drive for data source purposes. We're also exploring, we're in process now, so it's all about research, R&D and seeing what's possible. But if possible, we'd also like to support OneDrive, Google Drive, and Dropbox. If not in 2022.4, then in the next version. Again, it's all going to depend on what we find when we start exploring what these services have to offer for us. Okay, so that's just a sneak peek at 2022.4. I wanted to advertise the next webinar. It's coming up in October. 5 features you didn't know you needed. So I've got this running list of kind of obscure features in InfoBurst that we've put in over the years that customers find a lot of value in. For example, bursting database queries. We have customers that adopted InfoBurst for, let's say, business objects reporting, and they found this feature, and now it's an integral part of their InfoBurst solution. So there'll be a series of these where we'll go through and just show you some of the more obscure features, talk to you about the use cases, how users are leveraging them, and hopefully that might give you some ideas on how to use those in your daily operations. So that's coming up on Thursday, October 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and you can register there, events.infosol.com. Just go under InfoBurst webinars. If you're registered for webinars, you're going to get a notification of that webinar automatically, and John has just put a hyperlink to that in the chat as well. And as always, stay informed. If you're going to do one thing, follow the announcements forum. Go into help.infosol.com, select announcements, hit the follow button. That way you get an email automatically when we release new versions. That's mostly what we do in the announcements, but every once in a while we'll put other important information in there. I encourage all users to join announcements. And then we're in social media. We have a LinkedIn user group. The community interacts there. That's a good place to get information as well. So with that, I'm going to turn over to the chat and the questions, and let's just look quickly at some of the things that came in that I didn't get a chance to respond to. Address Barbara's comment. Let's see, Sajid asks, do the reports depend on how many days metadata is retained? For the operational reports, yes. Right. So there are there's retention periods for all the different log types, the delivery logs, the activity logs, which is where this information is sourced. And by default, all the log types are retained for 30 days. But you have the ability as an admin to go in and change the retention period. I can actually show you that. Where is my, one moment. forms. So in system configuration, log retention, system configuration log retention. The ones you'd probably be most interested in are bumping the activity log retention. That's where we're going to get the burst abort information. So set that to whatever you want. Audit logs, delivery logs. These are probably the ones that you want to increase if you want to retain more than 30 days. And if you're looking at something in particular, just reach out via the help desk and we'll provide some guidance. Metadata on objects is not, that's retained permanently. Okay, so that's that. Let's see, Kirk asks, will you be able to support LDAP query or user mapping now or in the future? We do not currently support anything related to LDAP, and I will make a note of that, Kirk, and reach out to you separately about where we might be on that. And I assume that means sourcing InfoBurst users from LDAP. Let's see, just going through this list one more time. I think I got everyone. So are there, Tom asks Azure AD in reference to what? Tom, you said Azure AD question mark. Is that related to user and group management? Yeah, I'm not getting an answer from Tom. So if you can elaborate on that, maybe just in the forums or reach out in the help desk and let us know what you're looking for there in particular regarding Azure AD. Okay, I don't see any more, Azure AD. So, okay, so I think your question is, does InfoBurst support Azure AD for Active Directory synchronization? No, not currently. I think that's the first that anyone's inquired about that. So I would encourage you, Tom, to put that requirement in the user influence forum, get it in there. Let's start getting users interacting and voting on it. I'll encourage everyone else, if you have a requirement, an idea for InfoBurst, user influence forum is where we're asking you to go and share those ideas with us. Everything in the user influence forum will be evaluated in each development cycle and considered for development in that version. So I think that's all the questions and comments that we have. Once again, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate your attendance and your time and your ideas and your energy around InfoBurst. With that, we'll conclude the webinar, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks again.